Thank you guys for being with me. I had
Sure.
the chance to see this film at the Sundance Film Festival, which I think was a great, big screen to experience all the vivid colors. And I'm curious what your own experiences are with this property, with the book, the play, the movie, etc., and what you knew about it going in, what your expectations were.
Huh.
Well, I saw the movie when it came out and saw the Broadway musical a couple times, and that's what I knew about it. I didn't read the book. I I'd like to go back to it now though, because apparently Bill has taken things from the book that were neither in the movie nor in the
Yeah.
Broadway musical nor in other incarnations of it. So I'm eager to read that and see what was missed.
Yeah, and I had seen the movie, I think, when did it come out? 1985. So I was in grad school at that point, and I remember being shocked by it. I didn't expect that story at all, and it seemed oddly abstract to me, particularly the movie within the movie, which landed strangely. So I read the book. I wanted to know what the source material was, and that led me to read another of his books as well, which I liked better actually, called Betrayed by Rita Hayworth. And more gay man, 1970s, in love with old movies, but it was a completely different story. Um, and I remember the Broadway musical existing, and I didn't see it. I had just moved out of New York, so I wasn't there for that. And then I promptly forgot about all of
What are some of your favorite musicals from, the era that this movie is trying to portray?
Oh God, how much time do you have
Uh, Hour and 32 minutes. Go ahead.
between the two of
We
us?
both have a long list.
Yeah, the ones that apply to this movie probably are random things that few others have seen. There's a Fred Astaire movie that Vincent Minnelli directed called Yolanda and the Thief. That's not a great movie by any means, but it's really imaginative in ways similar to ours, to our story. There's another movie that's kind of an anthology movie of musical numbers and really bad comedy scenes, called Ziegfeld Follies, that has a couple of just unforgettable moments in it that, again, we kind of referred to obliquely in what we were doing here. And then, there are all those classics. There's An American in Paris, there's Bandwagon, there's Singing in the Rain, blah, 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 blah. All the, top 100 musicals of that era that were among things that we looked at. But as everyone of us will say, we didn't set out to copy anything literally. It was just taking the sensibilities and attempting to create something new from them.
And we were lucky that Bill loves musicals as much as us, maybe more. That's debatable. Um, um, he put together a reel of scenes from these movies and some even more obscure than Scott mentioned. So it was great for me to see some of those for the first time, and then also some of my favorites. But it was really instructive to see all this put together by Bill, and then for us to then translate and pull out of it visuals for the movie.
If I remember correctly, there's actually more of the movie that takes place in the prison than in these moments, but I still imagine that you spent more time designing the lavish musical sequences than, the prison cell and surrounding walls itself.
Sure, the prison is one environment that has multiple facets, whereas each of these numbers had really specific notes that we were trying to hit, I mean, literally and figuratively. And also, the numbers themselves are their own story arc. And so we were out to connect musical numbers to each other as much as to the prison story, but also not repeat ourselves and follow the it's this is the part I love the most about the film. It's the as the story becomes more detailed and more emotional in prison, the musical numbers start to become more abstract and more challenging, and certainly more laden with emotion emotional drama, if you will, than they start out with in the course of that, and visualizing that in ways that don't draw too much attention to themselves, because you don't want the audience to start analyzing the musical numbers, God forbid. But for us to visualize the inherent drama that you wouldn't necessarily notice at first viewing, that was an interesting and tricky part of the job.
Would you say there's a particular set or sequence that was most ambitious or challenging?
What do you think, Andrew?
I think they all were, based on how little time we had to put it all together. We had enough time to research it, but to actually build it, paint it, dress it, shoot it. The musical numbers were all shot in one day for the most part. And when you look back on other movies, um, a lot of times it's a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks for each musical number. So it's amazing that Bill could achieve that, Bill and the choreographers and the dancers. Um, but they were all challenging, but also different. So it was really exciting to do Aurora's bedroom, which was um, it was so specific and very much based on 1940s. Um, I'm trying to think of, sorry. Um, the juxtaposition of that kind of a set, a very stylized 1940s set, and the Jungle Hut, for instance, very, very different. And that was extremely detailed, lots of layers, lots of Easter eggs hidden, telling the story. There were, spider paintings and animals. Um, it it was just a very different look, the way it was lit, the way it was painted. So those are two examples of just very different sets.
It was fun too, because that the Aurora's bedroom set was the first set up for us to shoot, and it was where we had to make sure we were doing the period thing. I think Andrew and I are so, I mean, we never designed movies in the 1940s, and they did things differently then. And it was our task to make sure that these numbers looked as period authentic as they could. And, the trick was, and it displayed itself right there in that first set. We're so accustomed now as designers, decorators, visual storytellers, of layering in character details like crazy. I mean, the richer the story being told visually, the the better, as far as we're concerned. Whereas that's not how they did it back then. Those movie sets are, if you look at them closely, they are incredibly spare, and they're incredibly artificial looking. Even the film noir stuff that's trying to be edgy and art, it's all studio theatrical stuff. And if there's a detail in the set, it's for a very specific purpose, and you can see it, and there's not clutter, there's not density of layering. And our first pass was taking all of these beautiful things that Andrew and his team had assembled, rich in character, beautiful in detail, layering them into the set, and walking through and going, this is beautiful, but this looks contemporary. Let's start editing. And we got it to the point where, as they did back then, there are three purses on an ottoman, and you can see each of the three of them have something to say. That's it. And there's a makeup table where you can see what each object is, as opposed to what they really look like, or
Mhm.
they smash there. What the fuck is it? So it was that quick learning process for ourselves. Nobody else noticed what we were doing, but we got it, and keyed in our sensibilities right off the bat. And I think that really helped us as we went along.
It really did.
And how did you work to infuse personality into the cell and make it feel like it was a space that people could comfortably spend, audiences could spend a while in over the course of the film?
Well, that was
Comfortably it's a tricky word. So,
Not the right word, maybe people could appreciate the fact that this did feel like home to these two people as they built this relationship. Maybe that's the way I would put it. Not comfortable, sir.
well, that was another example of pulling back, because originally Molina brought in some more comforting things than Valentine had in the cell. So we brought in a little folding table. He brought in his little stove. Um, some the beaded curtain, of course, but things that were brought in from his other cell because he was sharing a cell with other homosexuals. Um, that was a set that we shot and was cut.
Yeah,
It was
it's
going
on.
to open the movie with him leaving the cell, and next to that cell was what I called the straight cell. It was very sparse and messy, and their cell together was very colorful. And he brought back the some of the colorful curtains. So I originally had a lot of things in there, and we wanted the actors to contribute to what they thought was appropriate in there. And one thing that Diego said was he wanted things less domestic. And so we had overnight some wooden crates created. We had an incredible team down in um, in
Oh,
Uruguay
yeah.
who um, who were able to achieve things just so fast and beautifully done. So they made crates overnight and painted them and aged them and they were fabulous. And so those were used um, in different ways as a bedside table, as the table when they had their picnic, stacked up in other ways. So it was a good lesson in cutting back even in that regard.
Too, it was so important that that prison be horrifying in its, in every way possible. So it was a real prison. It was built in the 1890s, and when we got to it, it was in a state of severe disintegration. It had been stripped of all of its prison hardware. There weren't any gates or doors to slam or anything like that. And the process of layering back in the reality of that situation for our story, making sure that it texturally and in terms of the scale of the spaces, it had this melodrama to it and this sort of operatic intensity, so that it could have the same, a comparable pitch to the prison scenes that the crazy ass musical numbers have. And that's all at this, and so is the prison drama. It's just fucking disaster, torture, haunted house of horrors kind of place. So the fact of that envelope being enlivened by, for God's sake, a gay man who's just collecting trash to make the place feel better for them. It's such a it's it's a moving contrast in itself. And how Melina is always spending time in there closing the drapes so you're not staring at the toilet while you're in there all the time, or whatever these little things he's doing in there. They're laden with emotion. You feel it all while you're in their story with them right there. And I think that's how the audience is drawn in and finds warmth for those characters. It's the desperation of it all that creates not a sense of comfort, but it reveals their will to survive, I think, in really touching ways.
And shooting those scenes were very intense for the actors and for the shooting crew. I believe it was 3 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks in the cell alone.
Yeah.
And it was very dark. And just the hours spent in that one little room was it really helped out the actors because it was so claustrophobic and so dark and you could almost smell it. I mean, it was so the scenics did a fantastic job creating the texture to that cell. So yeah, it was pretty intense.
It was trippy too. I don't know if you remember this, Andrew, but when toward the end of the shoot in Montevideo, we had the scene out in the courtyard where the two other men, their supporting characters, are singing that song, that really kind of sad guitar song. And our hero prisoners are, just hanging there listening. When it was a lone shoot actually that day, and when our two stars were not on camera, they were um, they were still together like they were their characters in this scene, and I was I was mesmerized by watching their body language with each other and becoming aware of them being so into their characters that they were still in this physically connected and very emotional space. And at a certain point, one or the other of them remembered that, oh, we're not on camera right now, and I watched him kind of pull back from the other, and then the other respond to that and pull back again, and the two actors stopped being their characters and just became actors off camera. And then somehow, whatever it was about the moment pulled them back together, and it was its own little mini drama that was so touching. I wish it was on film. There was something about the process of shooting all the prison story that was so deeply moving. And I think I've seen this movie now with so many different audiences, um, and so much of the time, what the audiences come out talking about is how much they love those two men in the prison cell. Even straight men, I can't believe it, but they love it.
As they should.
Yeah,
Well, thank you both so much. I really appreciate you going deep with me and remembering some of the impressive work you've done here, and wish you plenty of luck in the future with all your projects.
thank you very
Thank you
much.
very
Well,
much.
talking with you.